JDS, hello, Dan and Joe. Considering the lies that circulate about projects and the maximalism of certain communities, how would you go about implementing standards in our space? So, what I believe is basically a democratic way to go about it. I think that the community should really set the standards. It should be up to a community vote to set standards. Now, of course, some of the basics have to be there, right? And again, that's something that the community can figure out. We can start with the basic rules, and then move along to kind of figure out what makes sense. Now, the maximalism, I mean, it's always going to be there. You can't really fight maximalism. You can only recognize it and shunt away from it, and just to basically, expose it. But you're never gonna do away with it. So I think that one of the main standards that we should implement in our community, as far as legitimizing projects, is deliverables. Projects that are utilizing the community's sentiment and the community's support should be transparent about their deliverables and should be accountable. They're accountable for the deliverables that they are promising. I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, aside from that, I think everything else will fall into place, because if we can, as the Ergo whale says, if we can under promise and over deliver, that's the best way. So I think that's very important. I think that milestone is very important. What do you think about that, Joe?
Could you put the question up again? I think a big part of maximalism is driven by narrative, right? It's like unlimited TPS, and it's like, oh, wow, that is like impossible in a finite universe. But, it becomes possible that people believe it, and then, they have money on the table, right? And so being that they have money on the table without critical thinking, I guess, they have a tendency to defend it and fight each other. And it becomes this weird, I don't know, man. It's almost like team sports or something. I think the best way is critical thinking, which critical thinking is, to a large degree, learning, challenging, asking questions, and recognizing, let's say, what you don't know, versus, a lot of the times when you get into like the tribalism and fighting, it's just people that don't know what they're talking about.
So, what would you say? What kind of, what kind of standards can we implement and the Ergo community to really kind of fight this tribalism and fight this, just the BS that comes out of some of these projects where, they hype things up. They do they spend all this money on marketing and spend no money in actual development. And they just, they just kind of string people along. And then a lot of times they'll actually be able to collect a lot of funds with that kind of stuff. And in the end, really not deliver anything. I mean, what would you say? I mean, yeah.
I think there are like three aspects you really have to dig into, and they all have to do with critical thinking, asking questions, kind of analysis, due diligence. The first is that whenever you hear, let's say, about a project, you should be asking fundamental questions in terms of like the technology. Is it open source? If something is not open source and it's either base layer or core infrastructure, you're now in the trust me bro situation. You have no idea as a user, what you're getting into. That is always something that I would recommend people stay away from. Closed source wallets, stay away from people that, aren't willing to show you what they're building, because how can you have a trustless system with black boxes everywhere, right? That creates fundamentally an issue, in my opinion. The second is, whenever you hear wild claims, ask about them. Like if they're saying, oh, Dan, I was driving in my car at 500 miles an hour, you might want to say, well, what kind of car do you have? What road was that on? Basic questions that, if indeed that is reality, that happened in a certain environment, under certain circumstances, and is there data about that? Or is it just me saying, I ran 500 miles an hour yesterday? And, it's sometimes, absent any form of like detail or data around that, it's just a baseless claim. And then
DYOR.
Yeah, you really have to ask critical questions, and the reality is, being that there's a lot of new people coming into the space, probably that's just I don't know, the environment that's happened in like the last 2 years. There really needs to be education. Like, what are you getting into? Because, even the media in this industry does really shitty. It's sad if you open like CoinDesk and they're like, oh, there's this new project Safe Moon and it's going to be really fun. And, we're going to list it on big exchanges. And,
don't get started on the crypto media. This just, it's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. Really and I'm embarrassed for them. That's the thing. I am embarrassed for them, because look, we all know that even, mainstream media standards are not, what the average person would find good. Okay. But
it's entertainment.
Yeah, it's entertainment. But look, crypto media, they need to step this stuff up, or they just need to back off and let somebody else do it, because we can't keep having this shit, okay? We can't keep having this obvious hype and obvious bias come across as news. It's not news. It's bias, and you're obviously shilling your own bags. I just don't understand, and so many people already see it. I think that there's more people, a majority of people that understand that crypto media, the way it is right now, is complete BS. And I just don't understand, how long will the crypto media keep going with this? Like Cointelegraph with their, with their analysis of God knows what, these ridiculous articles, highlighting these projects that are obviously scams, and then crapping on projects that are actually out there doing stuff. Or how many times have they covered Ergo, for example?
Okay,
how many times?
Rarely, and the reality is, it's just paid advertising. It's a paid advertising drag. It's not media. But
it's
anyway,
pitiful. It's pitiful, and this has to stop. And you know what, guys? Maybe during next Ergo hack, we could do a decentralized media, or decentralized media platform, something like that. I'd love to see that. Because this kind of stuff, it needs to stop. We need to do better as an industry than this.
No, we hear that a lot at Ergo. They're like, oh, you don't have influencers. It's like, yeah, because I don't want to pay them. They don't know what they're talking about. They would just be like, okay, give me a piece of paper, and then I'm going to read the piece of paper and look at a camera, and everyone's going to think that I know what the hell I'm talking about, when I obviously don't. Exactly. That kind of thing drives me a little nuts. It's like, that's not what makes this technology work. And the reality is, look at USDT as a good example, right? Good ideas win over time, and crap ideas, you can market them, you can have all the access in the world, and if it's a shitty idea, it's still a shitty idea.
Absolutely. And I was just saying, look, I wasn't making a particular statement about USDT and about Quan, okay, with my last tweet, but I did see this stuff where I'm assuming that everybody saw my last tweet, but I was basically saying that one of the traits of a good con man is that they're likable. So, and I'm not saying, and I'm not saying this, I'm not saying that Quan is a con man. Okay, I'm not saying that at all. Okay, but this kind of brought this tweet came out. Like, I thought about this thing when I was reading about Quan and about other projects that just kind of, that basically blew up in somebody's face, and they said, well, I met this guy and he was a nice guy. He's not a con man, he's a nice guy. It doesn't mean anything. Okay, con men usually come across as likable people. That's why they're confidence people. They build confidence because they have likable, they're likable, they're easy to connect with, and you trust them. They build confidence in you, therefore they're confidence people. Just because somebody's likable doesn't mean that they're not full of shit, doesn't mean that they're not confident, that they're not con men. And people need to realize that, not everybody, just because somebody's out there and they're likable and they're telling you, oh, well, this happened and this happened, doesn't mean it's not bullshit. And that's what that's what this kind of crypto media does. They come out there, they put somebody there, pretend like this person is very likable, this person is very knowledgeable, and all they're doing is they're just reading off a piece of paper that somebody else wrote. They have no idea what they're talking about, and they're telling people who think that they don't know, okay, but in reality, they might actually know more than that person does. It's just because the presentation of this particular information, they think that they don't know, so they think, oh, well, wait a second, that person knows what they're talking about. That means I'm wrong. And this is how this information gets spread. So we have to be really careful about that.
Yeah.
My little rant about that.